Hi everyone, my name's Deanna and I'm trying to scribble my way to becoming a traditionally published author. And this is a writing vlog, though technically it's an editing vlog, and also it is Thursday. And usually I start these vlogs on Monday. Now don't at me. If you've seen any of my other vlogs, I think you'll know that sometimes we start on Thursdays because I basically work in a hybrid role for my day job, and it means that the beginning of the week can sometimes be a bit more busy and sometimes I don't have time to do writing or editing, whatever, from Monday to Wednesday because I have to go into the office, and I also have a chronic illness, which means that I usually need like a day to prepare, day in the office, and then a day to like cool off from being in the office a lot of the time. And you know, things get busy too, and let me tell you, this week has been busy. We have had a lot of stuff to do at work, and also it's been busy on the social front middle of the week, which isn't really normal for me because we had a 93% eclipse in the UK in London where we are. So that was yesterday on Wednesday. We went to see that. We hung out with some friends. I got literally no good footage of it because my phone is not that girl, but I think my partner got some good photos. That's about it. The only footage I got was of this really friendly cat in the pub while we were waiting who was going around saying hi to everyone. Speaking of cats, hello Mars. But it was really like a crappy situation because someone had their dog just off their leash and the dog chased the cat away, and thank God no one was hurt, no animals, no humans. But yeah, it was really messed up. One of the bar patrons went and chewed out the owner, I think, because they were like, why do you just have your huge dog off a leash in a public place like that? That's just not safe. But yeah, anyway, all's well that ends well. Nobody got blinded, though we saw a shocking amount of people out and about without eclipse glasses, seemingly just with their sunglasses on staring into the sun. And I really hope that no one got eye damage because you're not supposed to do that. We did a lot of research about like keeping safe before going out there, to the point where I was looking up like, can I wear contact lenses? Anyway, it was all fine. It was a fun time. It was nice to see a bunch of our friends and eat some pizza in a park. But that does mean that I have done little to no editing/writing. So if you're new here, first of all, welcome. But also, just to catch you up, I am currently going over and doing the edits from a round of beta reading that I did for my post-apocalyptic fantasy novel, Project Lightwood. Basically, last month I swapped with 4 other writers. I beta read and made notes on their novel, and they did the same for me. And last week, and in last week's vlog, I basically reread my own book after not touching it for a month, kind of made some of my own notes for edits that I want to do, and then also read all the feedback that I got. And then this week, what I was supposed to be doing was, early on, I was supposed to make a little editing plan by basically collating all of the feedback I got, including my own notes, into one of my spreadsheets that I do for this kind of occasion. And then I was supposed to actually get into the edits. Have I done that? No. So I had some time because I was working from home today during my lunch hour. Put your butt away. During my lunch hour, I basically made the table from like a previous template that I had, just made a clean one. And I put in the answers to the beta reading questions that I had, which you can find in my beta reading video if you're interested in that. But it was 10 questions that was basically like, what did you think of the dialogue? What did you think of the ending? What did you think of this and that? So I put in all those answers from the beta reader into the table. And then I got through the first 3 chapters worth of comments. I'm not putting every single comment into this grid, by the way. I'm putting like overarching chapter comments or problems, and then I'm still also going to go through the individual comments like on a line level that people have left, as well as I edit each chapter as I go through. But this is just to like distill down what are the core problems that I still need to resolve in each chapter and in the book as a whole too, like based off those questions. And then that can help me kind of shape my editing going forward. That does mean though that I do still have to sit here and go through the remaining 18 chapters worth of notes and copy those into the grid. And it is dull. It's like administrative work. It's not really editing. It's not really writing, because it is just find a comment. Is this an overarching chapter problem? Do I agree with it? Well, actually, no, I'm not looking at whether I agree with it or not yet, because I do that at the end. I will show you what I do once I've inputted all the information, but I basically just have to copy paste it over and then do that 18 times for each chapter, and then times 4 for the 4 beta readers. So that is 72 times. Just sitting here counting on my fingers. Anyway, I think what Mars is trying to tell me is that I should just get into it and do it. I think I'm going to do Pomodoro method sprints for this one because I'm finding it really hard to concentrate for long stretches of time on this task because it is just just read, copy, paste over, read, copy, paste over. There's like no creativity really. There's like a little bit of decision making and deciding which comments to copy. But other than that, it's very like monotonous. So I'm going to bribe myself using other people's author-achieve videos and like watch those in the breaks between my Pomodoro sprints and just try and get this done today so that over tomorrow and like the weekend, I can actually start editing some chapters, hopefully. I'm probably going to have to rewrite some too, but anyway, we'll do that when we get to it. Let's start now. I'm going to do it now. I've literally already gotten rid of every possible distraction. I've called my mom. I've hung up the laundry. I've had dinner. It's 7:41. I know. Look how shocked Mars is. Okay, let's go. Go. Do it.
The one who makes the dead rise and become zombies. Become zombies.
It's me filming another clip on the same day again. So I did like 3 sprints and I did finish putting in the main chapter feedback for all 4 beta readers, which is good. So it took like over an hour and a half, but that's done now. That's in there. The reason I wanted to film a quick clip is because there's something that I'm finding very interesting, and this always, I think this happens like every time I do this exercise where I'm like going through feedback that people have made, and you get to kind of see the full picture of what they think of the novel, and then you start to basically subconsciously analyze their individual comments based on their overall impression of the book and how they've spoken about it, and like you can kind of see their, I guess, biases come in as well, and it creates your own biases. So what I mean by this is I have one beta reader who has clearly skimmed over or just like not been very attentive in reading some of the more key scenes, and that leads them to ask questions that are like directly answered on the page. It's like, okay, they haven't necessarily understood this, and then they also haven't really understood the theme because they ask questions like, they're like, say, I don't understand why they're making this big deal about saving this manuscript. It's like, okay, this person clearly does not value the idea of preserving art or literature or anything for posterity for its sake, which means like it's kind of hard to accept or like take some of their other comments seriously, honestly, because it's like this person has such a different take on what should be important. They're talking about how like, oh, they should be trying to survive this apocalypse and thinking about practical solutions and like saving that. Why are they like saving a bunch of literature? It's like, because literature is important to people, because culture is important to people, because human achievement is important to people, and like it's important to these characters specifically. And I think you can tell from their personalities and context why that is, but this person just isn't getting it. They don't see it that way. So it's hard for me, but it is a necessary exercise. And let me know if you've had this with beta readers too, where just because they're wrong about certain things or don't understand certain things or don't vibe with the whole concept of the book, honestly, that doesn't mean that they don't sometimes make valid points still in their criticisms. Like there's been multiple things where I've read it and been like, I'm copy pasting over things that I'm not going to use and I fundamentally disagree with, because I think they just don't get the vision. Like they don't understand this is going to sound so douchey, but like the artistic impetus, the theme, they don't understand or don't agree with the message that I'm trying to convey, right? That's totally fine. Everyone's different. And some readers just won't get what you're writing, won't like it, won't vibe with it. That's fine. But then they make a good point on this other scene. They do. And like, it's an ego hit to admit that, but it's true. And you do have to admit that. And then I was going to say similarly, like conversely, on the other side of it, there's one reader out of the 4 that it definitely like does understand the theme, does like understand the point the story is trying to make, like doesn't have as much of a problem with there being less action because they understand the action's not the point. Like this person really feels like they understood what I was trying to say. They understood the artistic vision, they understood the theme, the reasons for the character choices, like all of it. And as a result, they have suggested less changes and less edits. And again, a part of me, again, the ego part of me wants to be like, okay, well, I'll just follow what this person said, the person who understood the book the most, the way that I see it, the way that I want it to come across. It would be easier to implement less changes, right? They've suggested less changes. It would be easier to just go along and like only think about what's confused them and just change that and leave the rest. But at the same time, it makes me wonder how deeply they've read into it if they haven't noticed these other things that other beta readers have brought up as a problem. Because from their book and the type of book they've written too, because I've read their book, they seem to be very much more like emotions and vibes based, which my writing can be as well, and that's like a valid way of writing. But I do still want my book to be good on a technical and scene and craft level too, and it makes me feel like even though my ego would like to go along with what they're saying and not make that many changes and just kind of leave a lot of things as is, logically I'm like, okay, it's good they've understood this, that, you know, it's really connected, the book is really connected with someone, the theme's connected with someone, etc. But I should still listen to the other beta readers, even if they didn't plug into the story as much emotionally and thematically and artistically. That doesn't mean that their critiques are invalid, is I guess the point I'm getting at in general. But yeah, it's an interesting exercise. I definitely found this, like I said, with my previous book too, where there were a couple readers that were like very much understood what I was trying to do a lot better than other readers. And this whole beta reading, like feedback and editing and like digesting feedback process, is about that balance of like, you can't take any one person's criticism too close to heart. You kind of have to, that's why you beta read with more than just one person, because sometimes it's just a personal opinion. But if, as they say, if one thing comes up over and over again with beta readers, that's probably more of a persistent issue you should fix. But it is hard. It's hard sometimes to ignore the good things some people are saying and take to heart the bad things they're saying, even though you don't necessarily agree with them as a reader or a writer, or like think they just don't get it. Like it's very much a balancing act. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to call it for tonight. It is 9:30 and I'm pretty knackered. Tomorrow, my plan is to write my little verdict column. Basically, the way that the table is set up is each row has like either a topic or a chapter. So it'll have like a row on dialogue and then row on chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, etc. And then the columns are each beta reader, including myself as a beta reader for this one and the comments that I made when I was rereading the book after a month of a break. And now I have also the last column, which I'm going to fill out tomorrow, which is the verdict column, which is where I will go along for each row and say, okay, dialogue. These are the four beta reader opinions, and then my opinion on the dialogue that I have. What is the outcome? Like, what am I going to do in this edit to address those issues? Which things that have been brought up do I think are valid? Which do I think only maybe appear in one beta reader's notes, so therefore they're probably a personal opinion rather than something I need to worry about as much? And then also, do I agree with what they're saying? Can I put aside my own perception of the novel and be like, actually I see what they're saying, or actually I disagree and I think they might have just missed something that's already in the book and they should have read it closer, which also happens, you know, like readers are human beings and beta readers are human beings, and this will happen even when the book is published, like people will miss things. So yeah, that's tomorrow. I don't have enough brain power to do that today, otherwise I would have liked to just get it done, but it is going to be a long process because I have the 21 chapters and then the 10 questions that I asked people on top of that to go through. So that'll be tomorrow, and hopefully I start doing some actual editing and rewriting of chapter 1 tomorrow as well, but if not, then I will start that over the actual literal weekend. So hopefully by the end of this log we'll get a couple of chapters in, but that's my hopes, dreams and aspirations. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. One day at a time. I'm gonna go dissolve. I'm gonna have a cup of tea. That's what I'm gonna do. Oh my god, it's time for a tea and a treat. My evening tea. So British. Okay, see you later. Bro, it's a Sunday and I have done nothing. It's 4 o'clock. Ugh. I literally set up everything. I've set up my Scrivener, I've set up my sheets with the feedback on it, I got out my notebook so I could come out, film this clip, and actually get into doing something after doing nothing yesterday. Okay, look, let's back up. So on Friday, I did end up finishing going through and making decisions about all the feedback I got and putting them into my little decision column on the sheets like I planned. It did take 2 hours. That was 2 hours of breaks. I did Pomodoro, so like Usually I could have probably been able to do that in an hour and a half, like maybe less, but I really needed those breaks that day. This week has been so hard, like motivation wise. I think it's just the same thing that I experience at the beginning of like every single new draft, where you're starting right at the beginning, you feel like, oh my god, I have so much work ahead of me. I really don't want to start this because it's going to take forever and blah, blah, blah. But obviously it takes longer the longer you stall. So that's a separate issue. Anyway, I just kind of realized going through that there were a couple of minor plot changes, timeline shuffles that I was considering. So I was like, okay, I think what I should do rather than starting edits this week is spend the weekend basically deciding which of those plot changes I actually want to do. Because obviously those are going to be the biggest changes. They're going to affect everything else coming after it to a certain degree, just mostly the order of information being revealed. Oh my god, Mars. But still, like it's still an interesting thing to consider, right? So that's what I plan to do. Didn't do anything yesterday because we were shopping, doing other things. Again, it's stuff that I will talk about later. It's all life stuff. It's all good stuff. It's all fun stuff. But it's just not that relevant right now until things actually start moving. So it's kind of whatever. But it did take up the whole day, and we came home and I was like, I'm too tired. I'm not gonna be able to make any effective decisions, because that's what this is. This is the other thing with, like, when you come to decision points, sometimes you have to delay by a day or a few days for when you're in the right mindset, you have enough time and kind of brain space to consider what it is you're gonna do. Sometimes that decision also happens subconsciously. I'm sure loads of writers will agree with me on that. But yes, today, I technically have had the whole day to myself. I have absolutely no reason why I haven't done anything except for I was EP sleepy. I slept till like 1, I want to say. I did go to bed late because I got into a binge of watching an entire season of Hell's Kitchen over like the last 2 days. I was just on YouTube and I was like, I feel like I've run out of things to watch because the people I usually watch haven't put out any videos, and I watch those like right away. I watch stuff in the background and when I'm doing stuff, and yeah, I don't have anything, so I'm just going to start watching old Gordon Ramsay shit. So I watched season 21. Isn't even that old. I think it's from 2022. The point is, I was up till like, I think 4 a.m. So this morning I was obviously slow to wake up and blah, 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 all the rest of it. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to like have some lunch, and then I'm going to have a shower, and I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then, yeah, suddenly it's literally 4 o'clock and it's almost time for dinner. I was kind of freaking out about this internally while this was going on. And then I was like, why am I freaking out? I have been a night owl my whole life. Why am I trying to be a daytime, morning, writing, productivity person when I have been an evening, nighttime, my brain switches on at about this time every day? Realistically, this is how I am. I don't really know why I was freaking out. I think I'm comparing myself to other people, which we're going to stop doing that right now. Like, yes, other people are morning people, they're day people, whatever the case may be. I'm not like that. I do my best work closer to when the sun goes down, honestly, and I just have to accept that, and it's totally fine. I had a little break this morning, which means I can have a productive evening. So that is the plan. I have my notebook out that I wrote the original draft in, because this is where I've kind of done scene rewrites and all my kind of best brainstorming and planning decisions, I feel like, happen more naturally with a pen and paper. So I'm going to go through my table. I'm going to write out all the possible plot or like more wide-ranging changes, basically. And then once I have that list, I'm going to go through each item on the list separately and kind of be like, okay, if we were going to make this change, how would this affect the rest of the novel? How would the rest of the plot be affected by it? How would it play out? Where would it fit into the plot structure? Kind of just writing out, or maybe even drawing out on a plot timeline, plot line, plot graph. How does that sound wrong? I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, just kind of deciding whether that change is feasible, whether I like what it does to the rest of the story, and if I want to try implementing it in this draft. I don't think there are actually that many. I feel like there are more, it seems like more in my head, but once I actually get the list down, watch this be like 3 things, and watch this take like 30 minutes, and I've been like procrastinating it all day. Anyway, whatever. As we've established, that's how my brain works. And yeah, like obviously we're now halfway through the month, and I still haven't technically started changes on chapter 1. So I'm sure this draft will take me past August, which is not ideal, but it's also kind of like, it is what it is. I'm not going to try and rush it, because at this stage, I really do think the novel needs space to breathe. My brain needs enough time to kind of decide on each change. Like I said, it's the increasing intricacy of each draft and the changes to each draft and the edits being needed for each draft make things go slower, usually for me anyway. Again, I'd be interested to hear if that's the same for you. I would assume so, though. I feel like it's just harder every redraft to perfect it until you're working again to the limit of your abilities. But we are going to try, we're going to do this. And maybe I decide not to make any of these changes and I'm like, actually, fuck this. I'm going back to the original plot and all I'm going to do is change things on a scene kind of level to finesse it, to explain certain things. There are certain world building things too that need to be changed, but they're kind of easier to finesse into the draft because it is mostly just through character interactions, and things like the magic system that you see can quite easily be changed because you see the magic in actions. You just write it like behaving differently, and it's not that big of a change that I'm considering. Anyway, for that, also, what I want to do, maybe I'll do this first, actually, instead of diving straight into the plot changes, is I want to reread that first chapter that I deleted, I want to say 2 drafts ago, maybe in the previous draft, and kind of now that I've reread the book with a fresh brain, see if I think that it needs to be put back in. I think it could go either way. Right now, I flip-flopped, right? So I think in the last log, I was like, I think I need to put this chapter back in. This week, I've been kind of thinking about the changes I can make to the current first chapter, which used to be chapter 2, and I was like, actually, we can just put this stuff that needs to be in that chapter into the current chapter rather than going back to having that deleted first chapter being the one that carries that information. This is very confusing to talk about. I hope you understand what I'm saying without like giving away any spoilers. But I am going to reread it quickly, probably just now, and see if I do think it would be a good starting point for the story after all, or if I'm going to try and finesse the current existing first chapter instead. I'm also probably going to ask my critique partners their advice about this when I send this on to them in a month or whenever this happens, whenever this draft is done, and kind of send it separately, maybe even after they've read the whole book, and say, do you think this would be a good first chapter instead of what you read? Or do you think that the current first chapter is fine as it is? And see what they say. I think it would be good to have that outside feedback if I'm still flip-flopping about this. Maybe I've made a decision by then. Anyway, enough talking. This is also procrastination at this point. Let's get some work done, for God's sake. Did that end up taking me like an hour to do? Maybe it did. Maybe it did. Because are you shocked? It turns out I had already made a decision on most of these things subconsciously. Look, it wasn't a very long list, and half of the stuff was like, this is a small enough change or an obvious enough change where I don't see any reason to not make it, so I'm just going to make it. And the other ones were like either a quick think about it and then a no, because I think it takes away something from the characters' personalities or like their motivations. Like those events might have been more I don't know, propulsive or like more classically adherent to plot if I had done it this other way, but I kind of want to keep it as is because I think it's an important moment for some of the characters to like make decisions that wouldn't make sense for anyone else. Like this person would do this and the other person traveling with them, I'm talking about my 2 main characters, Molly and Georgia, basically one of them would make XYZ decision, the other one would disagree with it, but it's I think an important moment to show that difference between them where one of them does make the less logical choice, the heart emotional choice, I guess, and the other person to be like, I'm gonna go along with this but I don't agree with it, and what are you actually doing and why? And they have a chance to have that conversation, but also it shows, I think it's a good point early enough in the book to show that difference between their approaches to the post-apocalypse and their situation in general. So I am going to keep that thing that I was deciding on. I'm not going to change that flow of the plot. I also think it doesn't quite make logical sense. I'd have to change a lot more around it. I would have to change where a different character lives and the reason for why they've chosen that place to live, and it just feels like too much of a change that loses a lot of the original stuff I was trying to say with those choices. So I'm going to keep that. That was one of the bigger changes to plot is basically the sequence of events early on in the fun and games going into one of the pinch points. And then the other change I am actually going to make, or I'll try and make it and see how it lands when the time comes. It is around that time too. The characters are carrying a manuscript of poetry and literature that they're preserving for the future, and they basically find out throughout various points of the novel that this manuscript has kind of secrets and codes and things from previous owners that have been hidden in it, and implications for the world and the magic of the world and the apocalypse, etc. So I'm basically moving the timeline of that up in the novel, I think, to make it so that they start noticing these discrepancies. Probably again around the pinch point, or like at some point during the fun and games section, rather than reserving it for the midpoint, which is what I was doing before. Yeah, I guess it just doesn't quite make sense to have this mystery unfold over the course of just half of the book. It probably will improve the book to have it kind of pop up a bit earlier on, to give both the characters and the reader a bit more time to kind of sit with it, go through the clues. Maybe I'll be able to fit in another scene at some point where they get more of an understanding of it. Yeah, that one will probably be a bit difficult, and it'll be interesting to incorporate and move the timeline up on that, but I do think that is definitely the right choice. I think that's the biggest change I'm making as well. All the others, like I said, are either much smaller changes, or I have kind of thought about it and decided not to do them. Oh, why am I yawning so much? I need to have dinner. I'm clearly running low on energy. Yeah, I think at this point I'm just ready to get stuck into it. That's the other thing about editing and versions of manuscripts, is that you can't sit and plan for too long. It's just like in the beginning planning stage. If you sit and plan a book for too long, I definitely find that I start to get a bit restless and I tend to stagnate, and I can just lose all motivation to write the book, because at a certain point I think it's hard to pre-plan the book and you just have to get into it, get into the writing, and then fix things up as you go, or like get into the writing and kind of realize, oh, this is what the scene needed, or this is how the chapter should be, or this should be moved around like this. I think it's very hard to try and plan everything perfectly in advance. At least I find it hard. I'm sure there are some authors that can do that, and I've seen videos from amazing planners that seem to be able to predict everything that's going to happen and like how things need to work. I'm not like that. I need to get my hands dirty, otherwise I don't know what the book needs. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave things there for this week. It was obviously a bit of a slower one. I had a bit less time this week to work on the book, but I'm glad that I've done this stuff, that my table is made, that I've written out those notes, and I'm basically in a good spot to finally start editing tomorrow. And also I need time to edit this video too, so I'm going to do that this evening, and also try to have a bit of a rest since I'm so weirdly tired and sleepy, and hopefully that means that I can jump into chapter edits tomorrow for draft 5 of this book, finally. And like I said, I doubt I'm going to be able to do it in 2 weeks before August ends, but you know what? Stranger things have happened. So I'm going to say that I'm going to aim to do it in a month, just like I said originally, but we'll see how it goes after the first week, how quickly things are progressing. There aren't really any chapters that don't need any work at all, I don't think, because the changes are still big enough to have repercussions, and there's several strands of changes, like, you know, it's to character and to plot and to this and to that. So you know what? I'm not going to make any promises. This is my new tactic, is I'm trying to not put massively restrictive timelines on myself, because I always end up being wrong about it. Like, it's either way faster or way longer than and by way I mean like a couple of weeks, maybe a week sometime. But like I said, we'll kind of know when we get there, when we start and kind of see the rate of change. Saying that though, even when you're in it, it's hard to predict sometimes, because certain parts of the book go faster than others, certain changes are easier to make. All I know is I'm going to be starting this draft on Monday, and I'm hoping that you come along with me. So on that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my spiral about how to organize this edit, but you know, we got there in the end. As always, I hope you're having a wonderful time of day, and if you're doing any writing, it's going well. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!